I like to like do stuff in isolation and just get it out there and not talk about it, just do it my way. I know how to write it. I just don't want to spend the time writing it. So I ask the AI to do it for me. The AI just does it. I review it. I see it works and I get my stuff done. You have to still be very skillful. You still have to be very good. Every time I tried it, Gemini versus many other models, Gemini gave me the best, the reasonable answers.
Hi everybody, welcome back to Ship It and Sip It. This week I'm excited to have Best in the studio. Welcome to the show, Best. And let's start with a product that you're a big fan of, that you used to work for, that launched on Product Hunt just this week. What was the product and what was the launch like?
Hi, thank you so much, John, for having me. I'm super grateful to be here. I follow Ship It, Sip It, so I think it's a really cool podcast. The product is Formbricks. I'm a huge fan of it. With Matt and Johannes, they're the co-founders. Amazing team. They ship at lightning speed. I used to work for Formbricks. Actually, Formbricks was my first open source project I actually contributed. So I came in as a contractor and I worked for about a month. They launched the version 2 of Formbricks this week. It came with a ton of new features, revamped pricing. They added more privacy concerns, more customizations. You can double down on. I think they're doubling down on e-commerce as a niche and one other niche I can't remember. So they have updated their guides, their docs is well written. And I think it's an amazing product. I'll always be a fan of the team. I still go to them for advice still today, because so when ClassroomIO when I made it open source, I was still working at Formbricks and I had to tell the team that I had to just leave so I could work on ClassroomIO. And they were pretty fine. It was really good. I love them.
Cool. And the reason I wanted to start with that, and this was a Product Hunt launch, and I'm curious from your experience, is there anything different or special about launching an open source product on Product Hunt? Do you get more support from the open source developer community? Do you do anything different?
Yeah, I think I there is this GitHub channel, Discord uh, group or community that we currently have, which is the course that's commercial open source software. It's run by the main guy that runs on Inbox. That's Omar. And basically, every single week or 2 weeks, that place is filled, or every day, sorry, that place is filled with a ton of conversation between open source founders, and frequently enough, people share launches, right? So there are even more launches that goes on behind the scene, even without product hunt launches. However, product hunt launches is majorly, I think it's more about generally from a product perspective, but the commercial open source community would support micro launches or product hunt launches. I think product hunt launches is just an opportunity to just share a ton of things that we've been working on behind the scenes with the world. So you have, especially what Superbase does, where they have this launch week and then they showcase, let's say, one feature for 5 days consecutively, and then they at the end they have this product hunt launch just to bring everything together and make everybody aware that okay, this we launched this 5 things, right? So I think product hunt is just that place that brings together several people supporting your product. You have the opportunity to give discounts and things like that. So I think a product hunt in itself, there are other tools that mostly people use nowadays. Micro launch is also one of them, but most people still use product hunt to get word of mouth out about new releases about products. Car.com also did product launch a few days ago. So yeah.
All right, let's dive into ClassroomIO then. What made you want to build a digital learning platform and when did you start on it?
Oh, it's been interesting. I've started working on the first version of Classroom.io about 5 years ago. I So the way my background started was I had my bachelor's degree in computer science. While I was still in the university, I got a job in my fourth year. So my first job was actually teaching English. I was actually in the Ukraine, and I started teaching English to Ukrainians in a company
Cool.
that I actually applied to as a programmer. But the HR person saw my resume and said, "You're still a student, you don't have experience coding, but I see on your resume that you're an English speaker and you've taught a couple of people English language. Our English teacher is just leaving. Do you mind coming teaching us English?" So I was like, "Definitely, you bet I would." So I took the job offer. I came to the company. So I would meet these programmers every day. That had been my dream to work where they were, but I was teaching them English, right? That was my first experience actually teaching a company and running teaching in a much at scale, I would say, because I had like 10 students per group, and we broke them into like three different groups, the beginner, the intermediate, and like the advanced students in English. They spoke Ukrainian or Russian languages. So I would come in, depending on their level, we'll take in some exercises, some classes, I'll give them assignments and things like that. That was when I started experiencing my first pain point teaching. I didn't know or didn't find any cool, easy tool that I could just use to just upload lessons, run classes, add students, give assignments. All these things were just a pain at the back of my head that I didn't really think about, but I was just teaching. I would print A4 paper just with the lesson material, share them for every lesson. Assignments would be taken with pen and paper. And then when later on I got into the company, I started working as a full-time dev. I stopped teaching English. And then a few years in, we started teaching React to junior devs. So we would bring in people that just knew HTML, CSS. I would teach them React JS. That was where I actually, because now I was a more um, experienced developer. At the time, I was still a student, so I really wasn't thinking in terms of solving the problem, but I knew the problem existed. Then when we started teaching React, we had a ton of courses. After the third cohort, I think most of us had were burnt out already because we were using so many tools to run the classes. It was tiring because we were still combining that with full-time job. So I then thought about like why isn't there a cool, easy software that we could use to run these classes? I looked at a ton of them. Google Classroom was one of them, but you can't customize Google Classroom. Google Classroom is Google's product. It's you can't run that from a company perspective, right? So this was where I said I'm going to write the first version of ClassroomIO. This is where it all began from a background perspective.
That's really cool. It's amazing. We have a lot of parallels in our journey into tech. I was also teaching English in quite a few tech
Wow.
companies and eventually just pivoted into doing marketing for them. I never learned how to code, but I ended up on the marketing team here at Paralect. So kind of similar.
Nice.
And we also have a summer boot camp that we do for programmers every year. I'm not sure what the stack looks like for that because I'm not very heavily involved in it. But we're
Yep.
going into, I think, our seventh year of it.
Wow.
So maybe if the guys ask, or I'll show them this episode and show them
Right.
ClassroomIO because everybody here is also a fan of open source software as well. So maybe it's a perfect fit. You joined BuildSpace recently, and when
Yep.
you described what you wanted to build in BuildSpace for ClassroomIO, you compared it to Coursera in your
Yes.
description, which many people will be familiar with. Um,
Yep.
so you mentioned that you've looked into all the alternatives. What was
Yep.
missing and what sort of sets ClassroomIO apart from the rest?
The softwares like Coursera and Udemy are extraordinary software. They've been used by millions of people, right? And they empower people to learn digital skills, several skills every single day, right? Universities are pushing courses onto this platform. Independent educators are pushing courses onto this platform. But the thing about these platforms is that they are managed by a company, right? They are the gatekeepers of your trainings, right? That's that's the main thing for me. When people say they came to learn a course, they would say they learned it on Coursera, but you taught it. That's fine, but Coursera gives them the certificate, not you. and and that's I use the same analogy all the time when I describe ClassroomIO to talk about the experience of Shopify and Amazon. So if you look at the case of Amazon or Shopify when Shopify was first starting out, Amazon was this big player that runs this amazing and huge e-commerce platform that allowed sellers meet buyers and buyers meet sellers, right? But people, when you buy something, you say you buy it from Amazon. You can't grow your brand on Amazon. It's Amazon that grows its brand, right? People keep remembering Amazon. They don't remember you. You keep competing with competitors. The advantage of that, anyways, is that they give you access to their user base. That's their buyers, right? Which most sellers want, but it's not a priority for a lot of sellers. And Shopify has proved that. Shopify came and said, we're going to give you the Amazon level software to help you run your own Amazon to sell to your own customers. That's exactly what we're trying to do with education. We're trying to take the level of sophistication that Coursera has to run courses, trainings, certifications, assignments, communications. But Coursera holds the database of students. You don't, right? So we want to put that power into the hands of educators and businesses. And we have a ton of people who currently self-hosting ClassroomIO to teach in their university or to teach government courses, because like it has nothing. They don't know it's ClassroomIO. They can brand it to whatever they want and say it's their product and they're teaching, but they get all this software out of the box because it's open source. That's why the alternative is very important.
Very cool. There's a lot of innovation in the digital learning space. I guess the most recent one that has gotten quite a bit of hype, just because I think it got a lot of VC money, is School. Have you heard of that?
Yeah.
I looked at it very briefly, but it takes sort of a mix of social media and courses. What do you think about that? And is that sort of a competitor, or is that just something that's a completely different animal?
I don't really I haven't really used their product. I think I heard about their like their raise and things like that, but I never really tried or like went deep into their product offering. Are they open source?
I don't
Do
think
you,
so.
do you
I'm not sure,
well,
but
I think like open source has its role to play. There are open source alternatives that exist, like edX as one open source. But don't get me started with that product. But yeah,
okay.
they have a ton of features, yes, but like yeah, good luck hosting it.
You talked a little bit about your journey to learning how to code, and sort of your perspective as a teacher and what you wanted Classroom IO to be. But when you were learning, how did that inform what you wanted the learning experience to be on the product that you're building now?
That's a very good question. While I was in the university, I had tried to build a couple of teaching and learning experience products before. Some of my courseworks, my test assignments, I used to do something about teaching and learning, but it never took off. My university in the Ukraine was so prone to advancements. No matter, we were computer science students and we're shipping software in every semester, but no one cared about using it. They just wanted to grade us and leave. However, so that meant that I had several pains that I wanted to get rid of, but we just couldn't get rid of it. For example, one of them was attendance. The attendance was done in paper, and the lecturer would bring that A4 paper to lecture every single day and would tick it with paper and pen. So if you missed a class, or like you wanted to know, or also our grade book was also on that same paper. So the place where you graded, you put your first score, the second score for the next test, and everything was on that paper. You never had access to it and you couldn't see your other classmates' grades, like if you're very competitive and things like that. And I was so pained by that. I didn't like that. Or for example, we submitted assignments and we've waited for 1 week. We don't even know the result of our assignments or our tests. And all these things, I try to solve them with like the first version of ClassroomIO. So in ClassroomIO, for example, every time you're grading, you have to move the assignments in different columns, and the student gets notified every time there is a change, just like Jira. Like you move it from submitted. So once the student submits, the teacher gets a notification. You move it to in progress. The student gets a notification that your test is being graded, which is cool. And then once you finish grading it and you move it to done, the student also gets a notification that your assignment has been graded. Um, you can go check it. This was your score. And like I know I built that part for myself because I was so anxious to know like what the result of my test was without having to send the teacher an email. I could just go into the
Right.
software and look at the state of my assignment, which I know I built for myself. Or attendance is built into the product. Grading is built into the product, right? You can see your grades per lesson. You can see all the classes that you've missed and things like that. So like all these things are part of like the pain points that I had experienced as a student in the university, and I actually put them into the product.
Awesome. All right. You talked a little bit about how you got started in open source, but can you expand on that a little bit? And what do you see are the benefits, maybe ones that you haven't mentioned yet, of making Classroom IO an open source product?
So, like I mentioned, I've been working on ClassroomIO for a very long time, 5 years or so, but I never did anything with it. I just like it was closed source anyways. I was just building it on the side. For one straight year, I just gave up on the product because in the first year, a company actually wanted to use it. They tried it, they liked it, but they wanted to buy it from me, but I didn't want to sell it. So we had to part ways. This was the first clue that I should have seen that this should be open source because they could have just forked it and just done whatever they want or just bought an enterprise license and did whatever they wanted to do, right? But I didn't get the clue at the time. So I left the project, went on doing whatever I wanted to do. And then over the years, every single time somebody mentioned something about creating a course or like teaching something, and I always went back to my product that I had been building for some time. And I would pick it up, work on it a bit, and then let it go because I was working full time. A lot of things were happening in my life. So I never really took it serious until last year, 2 years ago, I hired a designer to work with me full time. So my wife really pushed me into like taking it serious because she saw something I didn't. And I started taking it serious. I hired a designer, hired some guys, we started working on the product. And then in there about September, October, I saw an opening to join Formbricks. I joined Formbricks. I was working with them. It was amazing. I learned a lot about open source. That was my first time understanding open source projects, how the open source code cycle works. I think that was important for me before I made ClassroomIO open source because I got to live and breathe daily improvements in the product. I made some caching improvements. I wrote documentation. I wrote the documentation to prepare people for their Hacktoberfest event. I was the one that actually wrote the article in collaboration with the co-founders, and a couple of improvements into the code base that were very, very instrumental, thanks to Mati, the technical co-founder. That helped me really understand the code base structure, how to deal, like having a Discord community, responding to to questions and issues, making releases. So that was crucial for me because I was very fortunate. A lot of people have different experiences joining open source or like getting into open source. Some people just find projects and have free time and just work on open source projects. I never really did that. I know that's a, a lot of people's story. Or they start a project, make it open source, it blows up. That wasn't my story as well. Mine was actually a job. So I got Formbricks as a job and I was doing open source as a job, which which was good, which was really cool because first of all, open source gives you exposure. I think that's one thing that people don't know. If there's something I look back in my career, so I've been building software for over 7 years now, and if I'm to look back and say what would I tell myself to do differently when starting out, I would say try if you can to contribute to open source and let your name be out there. I think it's crucial because you get this public resume. For example, when I tell someone about Classroom, so if someone is looking to hire me for something and I share my repo with them, that's ClassroomIO, they are amazed. They're like, wow, is this what you've been doing? This is amazing. They can go into the code, they can see the everything that I've been writing. They can see my commit for months, for years. They can see the way I write commit messages, how I create pull requests, and things like that. They don't need to ask me. And most times I don't even get interviews. They just look at my repo and see the work I've done. And so, like, this is something I wish I had done early on. I think I would be in a much different position right now, but it isn't too late. So I would recommend any junior dev, even though you don't think you're too experienced, try to contribute to open source. It just gives you this, like, because you're doing it for free, right? So you would earn the respect of the maintainer or things like that because the person sees that you're trying to add value to their product and you want to grow and you want to learn. The person would be willing to help you as well in your journey, and the person could give you recommend. I know how many people have given recommendations because they contributed to ClassroomIO, which I think is like an opportunity that you don't get if you're just looking for a full-time job. That's one advantage I've seen over the years. Sorry, over these few months of doing open source, that I think everyone should try at some point to do open source. Even though you don't have to do it every day. You can do it on weekends. You can do it maybe every 2 days, 2 hours or 3 hours, whatever you decide to dedicate. I think it's very, very, very crucial.
Interesting. Yeah, I wanted to talk about sort of the experience for someone who's not familiar with open source software and building in that niche. This may be a naive question, but is there sort of a sense of imposter syndrome there? Like, if I'm not very experienced, will people respect what I'm trying to do within the project? Will they even pay attention to my commits? Like, how do you get past that sort of feeling like I'm not ready to commit to this project because of whatever reason?
Yeah. I think the fear of anything is what stops you from achieving your goals, right? And you always feel that you're not good enough for something at some level. There are some code bases I get into and I feel very dumb, even though I know the tech stack very well. And from, like, if you're starting out open source, like starting out in open source, I would say don't be afraid to give it a shot. However, make sure that you're doing your best to read the documentations well enough. So even though you're not that experienced, the least you can do is read. All right, read the work that the person has done. Read the docs. Take a look at the README. Look at previous commits. Look at how they write the code. Take some time to do your due diligence, right? And I would say, like, it should not, because you don't have much experience, shouldn't stop you from starting out. However, make sure that you're willing to do your due diligence to do your best, right? So even though you don't know much about the project, but you spend some time understanding it so you can ask more specific questions. For example, when a person is setting up ClassroomIO for the first time, I can tell if they've read the README by the questions they ask me. And I can already start evaluating how much impact that person would have contributing to the project. So there was a guy that just came in, set up the project in one day without asking me a single question, and asked me, what ticket can I work on? However, there was somebody else that came in. Now everybody's case is different. there was someone that came in, this thing was not working, they tried it out, I helped them go through it. I said, have you read the doc, the readme? They said yes. They tried it, they came back to me, asked a couple of other questions. I said you should read this part again, and then I sent the link and then some other information. They tried that, and then they eventually got it to work, but that took a lot of my time. Now, do you want to guess who is more active on ClassroomIO contributing till today? The first person. So it's the
Yeah,
guy
yeah.
that actually did just read the readme, did everything it said, and got it working, and was curious about a task, got the task done the same day actually, and asked me for another task. I was blown away. I had never met someone like that. But I think those are the kind of things that set you up in a very, very good position in whatever projects you want to contribute to. You just have to be very hungry. I think it's the same with anything in life, right? To to get some respect from anyone, you have to show passion and hunger, right? If you're starting out, you also have to know how to choose the project. So just know what you like, know
Yeah, yeah.
what
That's my second question.
oh, amazing. Okay.
Yeah, yeah. How do you find projects to work on? Is it like you follow your interests? Is it you follow whatever languages? Is it better to find projects that not a lot of people are working on so that you can, I don't know, make an impact, or you find projects that a lot of people are working on so you get sort of a community give and take
Yeah,
sort of arrangement? How does that look?
you should first know what you want and what you're good at to a certain level. So you specialize in Python and machine learning. You should probably look for open source projects in that area, right? You specialize in web technologies, specifically Next, JS, Prisma, and other stuff like that, Drizzle. Then you should look for open source projects with those tech stack. That really helps you to narrow down your choices because they are top. I would as I wouldn't say just go look for any open source project that you like. There just a ton of them. How do you narrow them down? I would say start with the skill that you know, the tech stack that you're good at. So for example, mine is Svelte, um, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, React as well, but I'll prefer Svelte, and then maybe Superbase or Express or JavaScript on the back end. So if I see any project that's doing Python on the back end, I'll probably not be interested, right? So that's the first thing that you have to like do to narrow down what you want to work on. And then next, I would say that once you like narrowed it down to the tech stack level, then you then say, okay, in my opinion, right? I would say, okay, which task has a very vibrant community? So the contributor is active. They've made a commit not long ago. So like 2 days, 1 week, maybe 2 weeks, not a year ago, because like you're probably certain if it's a year ago that nothing you do would get into the code base. So make sure that the community is active. Check their Discord. Are they active? Are people asking questions? If people ask questions, do they get answers? Can you talk to the maintainers or people that are community managers? Some communities are really big that you can't actually talk to the maintainers. You'll be talking to the people that the community managers. Yeah. In my case, for example, you'd probably just send me a message, or like for Formbricks, you send Matt or Johannes a message, and they will reply to you in a few minutes. So yeah, you should make sure that the whoever is managing the community is approachable, right? Because that would help you to be more productive. You can ask questions, get answers, get stuff done. You can get help when you need help, right? Because that's one of the things that kills motivation. And then next, you should also, I would say, you should check if they have good first issues on their issues page on GitHub. So just filter by the tag good first issues. See if they have any issue that you can pick up. If there's something that you think you can work on, then just start reading the README and setting it up locally and trying to do the task. Or actually, before you do the task, just leave a comment in there that's in the issue that can I pick this? That's if someone else hasn't picked it. Or you go into their Discord and ask a question, can I pick this? Tag the maintainer or whoever you can tag. So get approval before you pick it up and then set it up and get started. Just get started. So I think this, if I was going to give some steps, I would say this could be like a good step. I probably might have missed some things here, other options, but for me, I would say like this should be enough to get you started.
Right on. And is there sort of community etiquette around, like, if you take an issue, you should finish it in X amount of time, or if somebody else is already working on it, you shouldn't take it? These are all sort of really naive questions, I know, but like, who makes
No, it's
these rules, and how does the community sort of function?
Are you speaking of ClassroomIO or in general for open source projects?
Just in general.
Okay. I would say like each community has their own rules. Mostly their rules are set by their maintainers. Especially commercial open source projects, they have already a team that's working full time on the project. So you would understand that by the commit history and the people that are most active in the community. Um, However, I would say like as regards knowing what issues to pick up, I would say like you should try to over communicate as much as you can. Ask enough questions as you can, right? Ask whoever is active in the community. So you look at the channels that are in the Discord, look at the previous conversations, look at who is answering questions. So you have to do you actually have to do a lot of work beforehand to actually understand this. Some communities, for example, I know cow.com documentation documents, so they have community guidelines. So they have a a place for you to start as a contributor. They tell you how to handle issues, how to get started with contributing to their product, to their project. Sorry, and like that should be a good place to start. I'm very sure of cow.com. They explain to you what each of their tags mean, so that's also very good. I think cow has one of the best um, explanation of like their code base. Um, yeah, I would say just consume as much as you can about their documentation and ask questions as much as you can. But read before you ask. That's what I say.
Cool, cool. Yeah, cool, cool. All right, let's move on to your experience that you started right now in BuildSpace, because I think it's a really cool cohort program for creators and builders around the world. Um,
Yeah.
let's see, I think you're the second founder I've talked to who's been in BuildSpace while I interviewed them. So
Nice.
tell me about the Nights and Weekends program. What is it, and why did you apply?
Yeah, Nights and Weekend is a program by BuildSpace that brings in anyone around the world that wants to build something or create something. So you don't have to write software, you don't have to design. Some people are making robots, some people are making content, some people are making music, some people are creating guitars. So some people are coding apps, AI apps, and mobile games. So like you can do virtually anything, right? So they bring together all these different people that are passionate about what they do for 6 weeks. And within your nights and weekends, so I think they say 70%, I could be wrong on this number, but 70% of people that do nights and weekend have a full-time job. So they understand. That's why it's called nights and weekends, because they probably expect that you'll be working in the evenings and on weekends because you're working full time. So the idea is don't leave your job, still keep your job, but work on what you're passionate about and bring that idea to life in 6 weeks. And I think that's amazing, right? It kind of forces you, gives you a deadline. Um, a deadline is a very good way to get things done. To answer your next question about why I joined, I've been doing a lot of work because I work full time and I have other things I do on the side. So I need to find more time to ship more stuff into ClassroomIO. because I do it evenings, weekends. So, and I have a wife, so like you have to really balance all of this. So, in general, I need that 6 weeks to help me to get something really done. So it's just like a motivation from a group of people that are passionate and driven, and you can see what other people are doing, and you're also trying to get your stuff done, right? So that's the main reason I applied. There is this hunger and fire and passion in the build space community that I really want to be a part of. I want to join the force of shipping something to life. And so I asked myself, okay, I know I want to do ClassroomIO, but um, what exactly do I want to get done within build space? So I said, okay, there's something that has been holding me back. There's something I really want to do before we launch. I want to get our self-hosting much easier. I want to get it out so that it's easy for people to self-host Classroom. That's how I coined the topic of what I wanted to work on. So a free and self-hostable alternative to Coursera for businesses. So anyone can take ClassroomIO and self-host it. Right now, you can do it. So some people are self-hosting ClassroomIO on Cloudflare, Vercel. So, but there is no standard documentation. There is no process. There are not much options, and I need to dedicate more time to getting that done. That's why I focused on that. That's what I want to achieve with BuildSpace.
Very cool. I was recently watching an interview with the founder of Ghost. I'm sure you're aware of the open source blogging newsletter platform Ghost. And I think he had a really interesting perspective on building open source and making the product nonprofit. It was very good interview on the Lemon Squeezy podcast. But my question there is, are there some really good examples of like how to build a sustainable business around this sort of structure of open source product that you look at and say, this is what I want to do with ClassroomIO, and this really makes sense from both a community perspective but also from a business perspective?
I think that if you're all in to make money, I I don't think open source might be your first option all the time. However, if you're in for building something that will last the test of time and would be used by millions of people, and that's your long-term strategic vision, then I think open source is a very good achiever of that goal. And if your goal is to be that person that sees very far and wide, and you want your product to still exist far beyond your understanding and your existence, you will definitely make a ton of money. You will probably have to figure it out how you would, because like many people have done it before us, and many companies have gone ahead of us, and like they're in open source. GitLab is one huge open source company. They were one of the first commercial open source products. They were making money and still, so they had a cloud offering, and you could just fork GitLab and remake GitLab. But they offered a ton of enterprise features and things like that. And they were backed by Y Combinator, right? I followed their story extensively for a while. And I think, for example, GitLab showed like that you can build something that's public that anyone could use and still build a business around it. Once you make something open source, in my opinion, just look at the impact that WordPress has made. Honestly, like for example, I wouldn't say I really know the team behind WordPress. I wouldn't say I know the people that built WordPress, but I would say that I have used WordPress in different ways, shapes, and form. That was not even sold to me by WordPress, the company. Many companies now sell WordPress hostings and build a business around that. And to me, that amazes me. That's very powerful that your product goes farther than you can ever imagine. And open source is one of the ways to achieve that. You can definitely build a business around that. I think, for example, right now, the only way we make money is through our cloud offering. So I know a couple of people that pay. So
Mhm.
we have some people that self-host ClassroomIO on their own servers and are running classes and trainings. Um, and we have a customer that's paying us to self-host ClassroomIO. So they are using our cloud version. Um, and that's one way we make money. So we also have a SaaS product that's cloud-based and is
Mhm.
self-hosted by us. People pay us a monthly subscription to use that. Okay. Um, one other way which is not that much is so sponsorship, GitHub sponsorships. People can sponsor you on GitHub for your open source product. Codacy is a company that's currently sponsoring us now. Codacy is actually the one that made us go open source because they were picking a group of companies, sorry, a group of open source people that they wanted to just train, give tools and financial support. And I think personally for me, I would testify that Codacy has been amazing. I'm glad I joined the program. And yeah, they are one of they are the main sponsor of ClassroomIO on GitHub right now. And yeah, their sponsorship has been amazing.
Awesome. Let's pivot a little bit more generally to building in public. Have you always wanted to share your work online on Twitter, on X, or other platforms? And how did this approach help you build ClassroomIO?
So, fun fact, I am internally a private person. If I talk about something, I can be very engaging. I can like engage in conversations pretty well, but I tend not to talk about what I'm doing. Even people very close to me tend to know what I'm doing once I have the result, not while I'm doing it. And so
Hmm.
building public is not my default go-to behavior. I'm the opposite of building public. I like to like do stuff in isolation and just get it out there and not talk about it, just do it my way. But if you're doing open source, I think like that goes against the idea of building in public because your code is already in public. So I started changing that mindset when Classroom I became open source. But I think that helps though, because for example, Igor from Parallax was one of the people. So when what's this product Momentum when Momentum was launching, and like they allowed you to build
Hmm.
this landing page. I was one of the people that was in that competition where they said anyone that could build a landing page with Momentum, and I think you get the highest amount of I think it was votes on Twitter, would win a prize. I think $100 or
Yeah.
something. Yeah, I won with one other thing. We kind of had a tie or so. So that process was the time that helped me to really kick off my building in public. I would say Igor is responsible for that. So like you know Igor from Parallax as well. He was he was the one that helped me to push me into this into this building public mindset. Um, and I will definitely be always grateful to that. Like he always says, your company is a media company. And it's from him I kind of like I've been shifted to getting to become this building public person. But by default, I'm not.
Very cool, very cool. Well, I'm glad that you're making progress there, and I'm glad that Eager helped you sort of get going on that journey, find your momentum. Let's talk a little bit about AI and what some of your thoughts on the future are, because it's a hot topic. You write about it quite a bit on your Twitter feed about the tools you use to help you code. So, how do you think that this is changing the way that new developers are learning how to code?
Yeah, I usually say this because I deal with a lot of junior developers on ClassroomIO, and I would say don't use AI to help you solve problems you don't understand. Make sure that you understand the concept and AI is going to make you faster in achieving it. Not that you don't understand it at all, because we all know about hallucination. AI might get the answers wrong. So I've started becoming an active user of Gemini. I don't know, Gemini from Google. I don't know how they pronounce it. I've been using it extensively. I almost use it every day. I use it for things like, oh, I have this string. I need you to write me a regular expression to extract this phrase from the string. I know how to write it. I just don't want to spend the time writing it. So I ask the AI to do it for me. And I just put it, I read it, I understand what it wrote. So I can just take that and use it. It makes me much faster than the average developer. Now, it doesn't mean I don't know how to write it. I have to sit down and then remember the syntax and write it, which is not a bad thing. It just makes me more productive. I think I've heard someone say that AI will not replace people. People that know AI would replace people that don't. And that statement is very, very powerful. And it's very true. So, for example, I can take a whole JSON, put it into Gemini and say, generate a TypeScript interface for this JSON data. And like, because I'm reading an API, this is JSON it returns. I want TypeScript interface for the code I'm writing. I don't have to manually start writing those interfaces by myself. The AI just does it. I review it, I see it works, and I get my stuff done. I think that's the space that people are not really leveraging. Most people are just asking it to write code for them, or they're looking for a something that they wouldn't read about something and just get the AI to do everything for them. I don't think, yes, that might come later, but I don't think that's the advantage right now. You have to still be very skillful. You still have to be very good, but you make AI your assistant in getting things done faster. I think that's the advantage, especially that I see for myself.
I guess my next question is, how did you sort of adapt these tools into your workflow? Did you try a few different ones? I know GitHub has Copilot. You said that you like to
Yeah.
use Gemini. I'm sure there are more options out there, something from Microsoft as well. How did you sort of test them and find the best one for your workflow?
Okay, I used to use GitHub Copilot. I tried their 1 month subscription. I didn't want to pay for it because I tried it out the first month. I realized that I wasn't using it often. In fact, I had to delete a couple of the code that it was writing and suggesting for me. So I just canceled the trial and didn't do that again. Didn't I haven't subscribed anymore. I used to use ChatGPT to get stuff done. So this stuff I'm saying with Gemini, I used to use ChatGPT for that. However, with this Google I/O, the past Google I/O events, they released some updates to Gemini, and I tried it, and the results became much better, like much better than ChatGPT. That's the I think it's the three turbo, I think. Um, and that used to be my go-to option. But when Gemini came out, which was free, obviously GPT-4 is much stronger, or maybe GPT-4o, but you have to pay for that. I don't use it heavily. It's not like part of my workflow, so I don't find it useful to pay for it. So Gemini, on the other hand, so I use Vercel, and so Vercel has this SDK playground where you can compare different models and then just give it one prompt and get all of them to give you an answer. And every time I tried it, Gemini versus many other models, Gemini gave me the reasonable answers. Doesn't mean Gemini gets everything right, but I find it more high quality stuff than the rest of them. So I was like, damn, I should be using this more standalone. And then I would do it. I got better results, got better results. Then I slowly stopped opening ChatGPT for some time. In general, when you're using these tools, you just have to find the one that gets the stuff done for you. And you have to wait. Some people pay for other tools. I know Perplexity is one other tool that people use. I actually haven't tried it, But I would tend not to use it. I don't know if it's a paid product. I know they might have a paid version. I'm not sure. Um, but I would tend to use the free one that actually does the best job. And if I realize that I'm using it a lot and depending on it, then I would pay for it.
And of course, the $1 million question, do you think these AI tools are going to sort of abstract the developer away from coding completely at some point in the near future? And since you're building a learning product, do you think that learning to be a developer is still worth doing?
So, first question, is it going to replace developers? I think it will replace some developers, but not all developers. So developers that are lazy, that don't know their technical stuff in depth, that don't understand the ins and outs of software. Like for example, front-end development and UI UX is beginning to merge. Some people are, I think they call them design engineers. So like this is not has nothing to do with AI. It just has everything to do with expanding your understanding, right? And I think that's the same thing, right? It will replace some developers that just want to specialize in something very niche that AI could do better than them at. But people that keep improving their skills, people that have in-depth understanding of programming concepts, they know different tech stacks to solve the problem that they need to solve. Those people won't be removed anytime soon. I don't think so. Um, AI is good at solving very, very specific small tasks. Programming is very, very creative, even though it can write code, but you still need someone to evaluate the code, to check it, to make sure it's well written, it's testable. All these things, you need someone that, well, AI could do a couple of these things, understand context and things like that, but I don't think it's getting to that point where it starts to take away jobs um, on a more or affect jobs on a more like large scale, like everyone is afraid of. So I'll definitely that would definitely lead me to answering your second question, which is you should still be learning to code. You should still be learning to code. You should still make sure that you know how to build stuff and ship stuff. First of all, because um, you can bring your ideas to life quickly because you understand how to build things, and you can then use these tools. So it's people plus tools that makes you exceptional, not people neglecting the tools or the other way around. So yeah.
Cool. All right. I don't think I asked this, and it's definitely a question that should be asked. What types of courses are most suitable on ClassroomIO? Is it for people that have developer courses? Is it for people that have English lessons at a company like where you started out? Like what's a great product fit or course fit for this product?
I would say that the people that find more success using ClassroomIO are people that train on a consistent basis. You have a consistent curriculum. You have students coming in and out. You don't just want to sell courses. ClassroomIO is not good for people that just want to sell courses online. Like there are a ton of other options. Teachable, you can even use Ghost. You can use a ton of other things. ClassroomIO is not great for those. So if you want to sell courses online, you should probably look for a very good option that allows you to just sell courses online. Even you could use Gumroad, right? However, if you run a training and you have students consecutively taking your courses and you want one place to help you manage them and scale your trainings, in the future, we want to do more automation. So, for example, right now we have AI grading. So, if your students submit assignments, the AI can read through the answers and give you some suggestions based on what it thinks the right grade should be. So, like all these kind of things, it's for people that are running trainings, not one-time sales and things like that. Um, so
So
yeah,
like
that,
more
that's
of like
that.
a cohort based learning.
Yes, a course-based learning. We have companies, for example, that So just imagine a company like AWS saying that they want to prepare people for their AWS. So sorry, a company like Amazon that want to prepare people for their AWS certifications. So they want to run trainings to that people go through their courses, take their tests, and at the end, if they pass the test, get the certificate. That's a very good use case. Companies that want to. So a company also approached us some days ago that they want to use it to run internal trainings. It's not bad. It's not bad for running internal trainings. It's actually like good for that because again, you have people that want to be taking your courses on a regular basis, and you want to evaluate them, and you want to probably give some people certificates. So that's also a very good use case. So you just weigh that.
Awesome. I snuck this question in last minute. I hope you don't mind. What is one thing in tech or life that you used to believe very strongly that you've changed your mind about recently?
Wow, that's a very good question. I've never thought about that. What is something I used to believe in tech that I changed my mind about now? Huh. I think I would say open source. I wouldn't say I thought the opposite, but I didn't think it was important. I didn't think I needed it. I knew people that were doing it, but I didn't see the value. I was like, yeah, okay, I know of the I know of the creator of Linus Torvalds. Very popular man, very well respected, but like compared to Bill Gates, nobody knows him. That was my mindset at the time. So like Bill Gates is this person that I actually, Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg were one of the people that made me go study computer science in school, actually. So I had them with huge respect and huge regard, right? So I was like, open source. Why would I do that? But obviously I'm doing open source. So something has changed, definitely.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. What is, besides BuildSpace, what is coming up in the near future for ClassroomIO that you'd like us to know about? And then where should folks follow along your journey as a founder?
What is coming up? We have a launch week coming very soon. I promise you very soon. I'm going to get stuff done so I can get the launch week ready. Um, that's something like coming in a few weeks. A week, 2 weeks, I'm not sure. Um, but that's coming very soon. Um, we are getting very close to getting into a couple of some incubators. Let's look out for that. Um, more information will come later. And yeah, if you want to learn more about like what's happening in ClassroomIO, just follow ClassroomIO on Twitter. Sorry, X. Elon should not hear me. X. Um, at ClassroomIO. Or you can follow me, Rotimi underscore best, as well. Like both ways you get the latest of ClassroomIO.
Thanks so much, Bess, for your time. It's been a really interesting conversation, and I hope anybody who's watching who is on the fence about open source will learn a little bit from this show and maybe dive in and start first reading the docs and second helping out to contribute to some projects that they like.
Exactly. Yes, completely agree. Thank you so much for having me, John. Thank you.